usually they say like working together, and we had a lot of pressure, but there was so much pressure, there was no time. Like if we disagreed with something, we literally would put like a timer on for 5 minutes.
You have done some wonderful plays about real live women that were really, um, if not feminist, a voice that Latinos know and embrace. Was Julia de Burgos your first piece like that?
Actually, before Julia de Burgos, I wrote about a woman who was an AIDS advocate who created the AIDS marathon in Puerto Rico, and her name was Delia Rodriguez. She was the first real life person I wrote about. Oh, mentira! I'm sorry. No. I wrote so Julia de Burgos. I wrote before La Lupe, but I wrote about two other women before that who were local heroes. And I wrote about a woman actually in 1990, one of my first plays, not the first, but one of my first, about a woman who was illiterate, who taught herself, who was able to be a functional literate, and then decided, like in her 50s, to learn to read and write, and then teach other people and teach in workshops. And then,
now, was she someone you knew? Was she someone you knew, or you
at a
read?
workshop. Actually, I was in graduate school, and my friend was getting her doctorate, and I was getting my master's, and we were just tired. There was just one of those days, like 5 papers are due in a week, and you're just tired. And then she came up to her, she goes, Nana, you shouldn't complain. At least you get to go to school. And we're like, like, the school, and we were there to do a drama workshop with seniors. And she was at the time in her like 60s, and then she told us a story that she was an illiterate, and then she learned to read and write when she was in her 50s. So she was 70, so she worked with seniors.
Wow.
Helping them with Medicaid application, Medicare, or whatever they needed, or to do like poetry workshops or something. She worked at the center. So I wrote about her, and then I interviewed her, and like I was like, I'm sorry. She goes, Nena, it's okay. Okay. So I was like, oh my God. So and then I wrote about Delia Rodriguez, who's the AIDS activist, and she's amazing. She was just this amazing woman who just like nothing. I don't know. There was this very famous Pan Am crash. I think it was in Puerto Rico, and half of the plane was on fire and the other half was submerged. So people either burned or drowned. She survived. She was like one of 3 people that survived.
Wow.
Like, and she was in the drowned, like in the water part, so she was able to get out. It's just amazing. So I wrote about her, and then I was commissioned to write about Julia de Burgos. And then Lupe happened after.
With La Lupe, what was the impetus for you to write that play?
I was commissioned, and then it was really hard to write. Writing about real people is hard, and there's something that whether it's my Achilles heel or not, it's like, especially if it's, well, no, it's anybody, it doesn't matter. But I don't want to disrespect women. I don't want to disrespect culture. And so many biopics look for like the gossip, and I don't like to do that. So not that I'm, I'd probably make more money if I did. Like, I don't know, but so Lupe was hard. Lupe, it took a long time to find her voice. And then a friend of mine had a tape of her testimonial when she became a Christian. And then I played it, and then I heard her voice. And this was before YouTube. I was writing before YouTube. All this now is her testimonial, her Christian testimonial is now online, and you can see it on YouTube. But she spoke really fast. She spoke really like, Oye, Lydia, mira tu hija bien linda. Y tu hija quiere ser directora. She spoke really, really fast and clear. She had beautiful diction, but really fast. And she wouldn't call you Lydia. She goes, Lydia Nicole, ven aquí. ¿Qué tú quieres comer? Like, she would be like, Lydia Nicole.
Right.
Carmen Rivera. Candido Tirado, like that's how she spoke about me. So then I started to get her voice. I started to, and a lot of it is research, is looking for research. Actually, what helped me, and I'm thinking about this now. For 6 summers, I worked at City Lights Youth Theater, which no longer exists, and they had a program with the Lower East Side Tenement Museum where we wrote plays about immigrants that lived at 97 Orchard Street. And we would get like a dossier. Here's the history of the family. And the students, the young people would learn about census and how you find information on people. And so I would help them craft plays. And I'm sort of like, I'm like kind of writing it, but I'm not. I structure it and then I give everybody a scene and then they write the dialogue. So that helped a lot in terms of like taking facts and then dramatizing them and then bringing them to life. And because you just don't want to go see a biopic that's like scene 1, this happened, scene 2, this happened, scene 3. You want to give it metaphors. So one year we did the women's suffrage movement, and like what's happening now, like there's always, voting is always being marginalized, because if you really leave it to the people, the people are going to vote for climate change and universal health care and education, and like all social programs. So at that time, they were trying to limit, of course, women's vote and then the immigrants' vote. So there was a huge coalition between immigrants and women. So at the time, there were all these ads taken out in paper and newspapers about what would happen if women voted, like women would go crazy. So we took all those ads and we made them interludes in between the scenes.
Wow.
So there's one guy, like, so remember like in the Little Rascals, they had the women haters group. So we found like this group that had like 10 labels, like the International Men Against Women Who Think That They're Men kind of group. It was like this. So we created these buttons, and then each like male character, like one of the young kids would come out, and one kid was 10. So they made his costume oversized with the big button. Because, hi, I'm from the International Women's Movement. And then we always made them like take a breath after, like. So anyway, you can't let women vote. You can't let immigrants. And then we would use the advertisements. So in any case, that trained me, like that helped me so much. So when Julia de Burgos and Lupe came around, I looked for metaphors about their life. So that would be like, that's like sort of my approach. So Julia, in all of her poetry, writes about the division with herself. She even has poetry to herself. So I created 2 characters, the 2 Julias. And then for Lupe, I had heard this in an interview. So when Lupe's career was over, she decided to go back to school, and she went to Lehman College. And in Lehman College, she took a writing. She actually had her teaching certificate from Cuba. So she wanted to then be a teacher here. So she went back to school, and she took this writing class, and she was supposed to write the difference. The lesson was the difference between fiction and nonfiction. So for her nonfiction essay, she wrote about her life. So she gets the essay back, and the teacher gave her an F. So imagine you get an F on your life. So she goes up to the teacher, and she tells the teacher, "Why did you give me an F?" And she goes, "Come on, really? You sang at Carnegie Hall?" She goes, "Yes, I did. You sang you had gold records, and you lived in a mansion in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Are you kidding?" And she goes, "That was my life." So then I was just like, that's gold for a play. Like, I was just like, that's it. The play is the essay.
Wow.
So she's going to go back to want to change the grade. And then from there, she's, that's the entry point into the story. So I like to look for this, metaphors or something, some detail. And it just depends on the research. It depends what you find and what's available and who you can speak to. And now we have the internet. I did research for both of those plays without the internet. I used to go to the library, old school, like Centro de Puerto Rican Studies for Julia, for Lupe. I just try to find as many musicians I could.
Did you do the same thing with Celia?
Yeah, but Celia, now the internet, we had the internet.
Oh, okay.
So it was a little easier, and she wrote a biography.
Okay.
So it was a little easier. Both Julia and Lupe did not really. I mean, I think Lupe, the closest thing she has to a biography is her testimonial when she became a Christian. So, but Celia, there was a lot more information. So it was not that it was easier; it was still hard. But like, how do we then tell the story in 2 hours?
Right.
A lot of music of somebody who lived to a, who lived into, you know, well into her 70s. Like, how do we tell that story? She's married to Pedro for 41 years. So we worked hard. It was sort of like, what do we do?
Yeah, but you
So,
were able to take Celia's story and La Lupe's story and really make them three-dimensional and give us a window into their lives. You
yeah.
know, which was fantastic, and the music, you know, was like you were able to just put it all together and give it to us in a very high end way. You know, it was like seeing a Broadway show. You know,
Oh,
there was not really like I wouldn't be able to distinguish. Oh, this is off Broadway and this is Broadway. It just was a
oh,
smaller theater because the writing was so good in both of those pieces, the writing, and then the actors playing it. You know, it was so
great
good.
cast.
You
Oh my
know,
God, absolutely.
La Lupe. I saw Sully Diaz do it,
Yes,
and
Sully.
Sully
Fabulous.
se votó.
Yes.
She,
Votó votar.
yes, yes, yes.
Like she, I mean, she left, as we say, pellejo. She left like her soul on stage every night. The great story about the audition. She flew in for the audition. She flew in from Miami dressed like La Lupe in shorts with the ponytail. Got a cab, went to the audition, got a cab, flew back home.
Wow.
And we were like, yes. Like, and she can sing. I mean, she sang the role beautifully. But yeah, no, I just want to say also, like, Celia, Candido and I co-wrote. So it was like one of the first times we co-wrote together.
Oh, okay.
So it was interesting. Like, we joked that we never fought while we were writing, and then when the show was over, we went back to normal. Like, usually they say like working together, and we did. We had a lot of pressure, but there was so much pressure. There was no time. Like, if we disagreed with something, we literally would put like a timer on for 5 minutes. Okay, you have 5 minutes to defend your point. If not, if it doesn't work, we have to move on, and you can't. And we're like, okay, and we did it. We stuck to it, and we didn't fight. It was interesting, but finding that story was sort of. We saw an interview with Celia, speaking, and Pedro's there, and then she goes, "Pedro, say something. You never say anything. Everybody thinks I don't let you speak." And then Candido and I looked at each other and we're like,
"That's it."
He's the narrator. And shortly thereafter, we saw a tribute to her. They did a beautiful tribute. Telemundo did a beautiful tribute to her before she died. And when she comes out, all in silver, by the way, like gorgeous, Pedro Knight is looking at her crying, and Candido goes to me, "That's where the play is. The play is in his eyes." I looked at Candido, I was like, "That's right. All right."
Wow.
So that's how we found that. And then it's like his perspective, and that helped us narrow too, because there was so much information. So it had to connect to their love story. If it didn't connect to their love story, it didn't make it into the play.